All right, Ashley Berardi, a realtor extraordinaire here in Flagstaff, Arizona. Thanks for joining me for your second time on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
And you and I, we love talking through design.
Yes.
So it's a side passion of yours on real estate, and I'm so excited to ask just a ton of questions that we have not prepped at all.
No, go for it. Let's
and get
just
into this. And so, because I think it happens so often where how a space feels.
Right. I think the moment you walk in
huge.
a door, the moment you walk in the door, the buyer is already, the moment you walk up to the front door, the buyer's already assessing it. And they're already getting a feel, and they want to feel like they can see themselves living there. They don't want to be a guest in your house.
Yeah.
They want to feel like, oh, I could totally see myself here.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. So we want to just dive into it today to talk all things like design and the space and the feel, because there's so many different pieces where I think things get overlooked and people have issues that they may not need to have, and so let's kind of break down some of these things. And I will fully acknowledge, like, I'm a very visual spatial person.
Yep.
And my wife is not. And so it's really funny that way. Like,
it's usually the case with most couples, I think. One is really good. The other one's like, I don't see it.
Yeah. So, and so the way that we worked around it a lot of times where she's like, I think I like this idea. I think I like that. I'm like, we've learned, because we've remodeled several homes together. It's like, let's consult Pinterest.
Well, Pinterest, and also I love Hallows.
Okay.
Yeah, Hallows is a great one.
Oh.
Because the
difference. Search that on.
Yeah, it's an app. And so the difference between Pinterest and Hallows is actually interior designers that have posted their professional photos on there. And then they usually tag them where you can look up what paint color was used, what products in the picture.
Look at this.
It's huge. It is huge. It's actually like my therapy at night to kind of wind down. I just kind of flip through the pictures as like a calming thing. But yeah, it's the best place to look for it, because Pinterest I find too much and not organized, where if you're looking for, like, let's just say a mountain contemporary home.
Yeah.
You can just type that into House and it'll pull up all kinds. You can type in exteriors, interiors. It pulls up everything very specific for you, but it's actually been done by, like, usually a professional architect, a builder, and an interior designer. I was all involved in it. It's the professional photos.
Okay. And that's helpful when they have, because you have to guess colors, they didn't put it out there. But I think that's one big piece too, though, is, and it kind of segueing into it, is that when we do that, a lot of it is to see the big picture,
right?
Because we all have those friends. I'm not naming them who they are, who get excited about a certain design aspect, or a certain piece of furniture. I'm sure I'm speaking your language here. And it's just like when I'm going to make a joke here, so I don't want to offend anyone, but it's like when my 6-year-old gets super excited, or she's 7 now, gets super excited about a certain piece of clothing.
Right.
And we all know how that 7-year-old comes out, like, ready to go to school, and, like, the tutu's on, because that's jamming.
Right.
And then, like, the winter coat and the tiara, like,
it's
all
all
these
thrown
things
together.
individually are awesome elements that she's super stoked on, but it doesn't quite come together.
No. And it's like, when I used to do interior design, it was basically, I would have the client pull some photos of, like, but it's more like the feeling. What's the feeling you want to have in this space? And so I'd have them pull these photos, and then I would take elements out of each one of them and make it kind of their own.
Yeah.
And so that's the best way to do it. Because, if you take one piece, I mean, it's like, and then I think people try too hard, where they're like, oh, well, I love this piece, but let's just buy all the pieces of furniture that match this one piece, because it goes. It's there in the store together.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work either. That just says furniture store in your house.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so, so let's talk then, I think, on a couple fronts here. So I'm very curious on what your advice is to buyers as they walk through, on then design from both things you can change and things you can change anything, but it's just how far down the rabbit hole and how much you want to spend on it.
So that's usually where I, when I walk in with a buyer, and I've usually kind of coached my buyers beforehand and told them, okay, you know what, moving plumbing, huge expense. So if you can avoid moving plumbing, that's huge. Yeah. If you can avoid moving a load-bearing wall, that's another huge one. But there's simple things you can do. Paint is the cheapest thing you can do, and it makes the biggest difference. Yeah. I mean, it's like night and day when you paint a room or paint the exterior of a house. Flooring not so bad sometimes. If it's tile, then yeah, it's a little bit more because you got to tear it up. But sometimes, like, I love seeing like the older houses that have that sheet vinyl.
Yeah.
To me, that says really inexpensive flooring remodel here because you can just lay the luxury vinyl plank right over it and done.
Done.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Nothing to tear up. You just lay it right over it, and it's an easy fix.
Yeah.
So.
And they can be, so a lot of those things that are very quick aesthetic changes. Now, it goes on both sides of things. I think where people need to understand, like a good friend of mine is thinking to dab his toe in the real estate market and more so of like the move-in ready kind of guy.
Gotcha.
And I'm more of like I've done so much stupid remodel stuff.
Everyone has, Chris.
Yeah, well, no, I've definitely crossed lines, but marriage is still intact. We talk
That's
about
good.
That. Yes, so I guess we haven't crossed all the lines, but for people to understand too, of like the premium that sometimes people want to assign to that, to say, hey, like if you really are, and again, I have a bias here, right? Because I think, hey, you can do some DIY Saturdays, figure it out, because it's an expensive market. Rates are high. Like, we got to figure things out. And if you want to buy the house that is move-in ready, they're charging they may have put 20 grand into it, but that house is not just 20 grand more. They're trying to charge more of a premium typically for that, right?
For time and labor and everything. Yeah.
But if we're talking, like, a lot of this is, do you see a lot of lipstick on a pig type of situation, where in the sense of like they walked in, saw the linoleum floor, just threw in some, probably $5 grand worth of luxury vinyl plank, and did a paint job of anywhere from $2 to $3 grand, and then they're marking that up by 30.
Yeah, definitely. And buyers are seeing it. They're seeing it, and it makes them start to question. They're questioning the ones that were just purchased and then kind of quickly a month later all of a sudden look really pretty and then on the market, because that doesn't happen with supply and demand. And so buyers, they're noticing this stuff, and they're noticing, like, use tape when you're painting. I mean, seriously, tape off. It's so simple, but I'm like, they're noticing the paint on the windows and the paint on the baseboards. I mean, all of it they're noticing, and it's awful. And what it says to them is that there was no thought and there was no detail, and you just weren't meticulous about it. And so it shows it was kind of thrown together sloppily.
Yeah. And so I think that's a good advice on a couple of sides of things here, right? For buyers to understand what has actually gone into it. Right. And if they want to save themselves a little bit of effort, and there's a cost that they're willing to pay for that, great. But also understanding how it was done. Right. And what was done. Right. If it was just a little surface and it saves you some time and effort and having to do the surface, but the bones are good. Right. Or what's under those bones. Right. I had to say it was the funniest thing. So we had a particular rental property that was left in very poor shape. It was like so frustrating. And so me and my wife are like ninth hour trying to get this place in a condition that we are willing to let someone
or even have your name on it.
Yeah, exactly. And my wife, and it was just, and I gave her full credit on this one. So I'm sorry, Abby, disclaimer on story here. She doesn't like it when I talk about her on the podcast, but I try to avoid it. But she'd put in a ton of effort. And so she was at this point of exhaustion. And I come by on this area, this section, and it was like it was like a light tannish, like off-white color that we were putting on this section by the island. Okay. And I was like, honey, it takes you like 2 seconds to remove the plates. Like, the light plates, I'm like, you got to remove these, because like taping easier. Plates, like, no, just remove them. Right. Remove your plates. And I just got it. Yeah. But I just had to laugh on that. So like, just take a couple of steps. Simple. It goes a lot more pro.
Totally. It just looks more professional. And I'm like, buyers, they're noticing it. And so it's one of those things too, where it's the flip side too, is that when I'm walking through with a buyer and it's not remodeled, then, I mean, as a buyer, you have an opportunity here where you're not relying on the market for your equity in your home to go up. Yeah. And if you can do some of these things, and do them well and to your taste, then you have an opportunity to kind of gain some sweat equity too in the house. So it's kind of that flip side where it's hard right now, because I think buyers want the pretty shiny thing right now. They don't want to pay for it, but I don't think it's because they don't want to put the time in. I think it's a misconception. They don't know how much it's going to cost. Yeah. And so in my experience, they usually think it's going to cost twice as much as what it really would.
But it all just so depends on how they want to digest that.
Exactly.
Because someone will charge you 2 times.
Yes.
So you got to be careful, right?
Right.
And if it's like, certain things that you might say, yes, let's have we're going to call the plumber out. They're going to do something. They're going to move this. This is important. We don't want something to leak. But then, we're going to do the backsplash on it or something like,
Right.
Fill out your difficulty level here, and your buddies that you can just pay for pizza and beer is a lot cheaper than
Right.
So again, use contractors when it's important.
Yes.
And so so I guess, is it really just knowing your buyer on how you advise them on the space, or do you tend to lean towards trying to find properties that haven't been done, or just depend on the person?
I think it's the buyer, because what I've found over the years, and it's kind of funny, is all of them, like when I first meet with them, and because the inventory is so low, they're always like, we're okay with a fixer-upper. And then I go show them a fixer-upper, and they're like, well, no, that's not really what we had in mind. We're willing to do paint and maybe cabinets, but not that.
So you were a big,
Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those things where, it's you kind of
facelift versus fixer-upper.
Yeah. Where I do have some that, I get calls all the time from investors. They want the fixer-upper.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm like, we have no inventory right now.
Yeah.
So, I don't just have fixer-uppers kind of in pocket listings or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you just have to feel your buyer out and figure out what's their comfort level with it, because I found some are okay where I'm having to talk them out of trying to move load-bearing walls, where I'm like, let's just keep looking. Let's keep looking if we're changing the entire house.
You got to be careful there. Really careful. And that's where I think a lot of people that's where this comes to a depth of conversation that I love it, because again, I'm a visual spatial person. Like, I love to walk into a home and see it as a canvas, right?
Right.
And see, like, we had done a big remodel on a property that we converted down in Sedona to a short term. And like, one of the coolest things I did in that house was I put a pass-through window in. Have you put a pass-through in on anything? So that just bifold window, just above the kitchen sink.
Okay.
Folds down, and you have a countertop going out to the backyard.
Oh, how nice. How nice.
It swings.
Oh, nice.
It's just rad.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, I was like, honey, we're doing this. She's like, you're going to have to sketch this out. Like, I trust you. We have a good trust there. But it's just when you can, like, see these things and then know how the space is going to happen. Do you find yourself, what's that balance when you're trying to work with someone and say, like, hey, let's see the potential here, especially with, like, your newer buyers, I think have a harder time with that. What's your balance on that?
So I get all excited because I'm the same. I'm just like you, Chris. And it drives my husband nuts because he sees work he's going to have to do because I've got the vision and I'm going to be like, oh, I've got to go to work now. Here, you do this, so it's hard, but I mean,
Anthony.
So, I mean, I walk into a space and I see the same thing where I'm like, wow, this has so much potential. It has great architecture. And and so when I walk in with a buyer, I'm trying to see it through their eyes, I think, but also I still have, like, I can't help but see the potential in it too, but I'm trying to see it through their eyes and what will work for them. And so any, like, adjustments that I'm thinking we could make to it to kind of make it fit their family, I'm usually bringing those up to them. Like if there was one that had a huge living room, but it only had 3 bedrooms and we needed, like, an office. And so there was easy fix. You put up drywall, you put up, either double barn doors or French doors, done. Office would have been there. And so those kind of things are easy, to see. But I'm usually trying to think through what would be best for my buyer and what would fit their needs best and how we could maybe make alterations to this house to fit that need. Yeah.
And then knowing, like, return on investment, cost initially, and then or do we just start looking in that higher? Because, that's the tricky part that we get in with a lot of clients too. And that's on the financial side, right? Where they think, hey, we love this. It's the fixer upper. And then they're going to need 50, 75, 100 grand. And that's like, should we have just looked up? Right. Because then the cost of that financing, of additional equity out, or how do we, so that folks kind of get a good, big taste on it too. Not that this is a lending commercial, but there are renovation loans. Right. There's a process. They're a different beast, right? Right. They're better suited as refinances because they do take longer to close, as we have to have a general contractor as part of them. Right. And so if you don't have the funds to do it yourself, correct, and you don't have the equity, again, those loans exist, but we got to figure out how we're going to get that done. Right. No, and so be careful what you bite off. Yeah. On. And that's so true too, because it's like when we're doing that, because I had one client that we were in that case where they were wanting to redo the whole floor plan. Yeah.
and, you know, redo the kitchens and the bathrooms. And at that point, I'm like, you're going to price yourself out of this neighborhood if we do this, because you're going to have all this expense going into, like, you know, having a structural engineer come in, where that's a lot of money going into that, and you don't get to see anything pretty out of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's under drywall at that point.
Yeah.
So it's trying to balance that and make sure that they're not going to overprice themselves, and make sure that they have the funds available to do those things, because it's coming out of cash.
Yeah, and like the lifestyle and time of it too, right? Of like, okay, you're going to reallocate cash to this, you're going to allocate time to this. Like if we just went up a little bit in budget and found something that's more facelift and less like scrape job.
Right, exactly. Or I think people think that, you know, oh, we'll just live here, you know, we'll sell our house here, move here, and live during the remodel. There is no way. It is like I think they say remodeling is the top 5 most stressful like life situations. It really is, because I'm like, you cannot live in it. I mean, it's hard. Yeah. You can, but it's not going to be pretty, and you're probably going to get on each other's nerves a whole lot.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, we take so many different things for granted, and a lot of folks that, you know, I know folks that have been through this are like, oh, it's so like fresh on your mind. It's just emotions you never forget, right? And then, but a lot of folks that have never been through it, like there's so much optimism that starts the project.
You're so excited.
And then it's like, you know, you just realize like the daily things. Like for a while when we were doing our primary model, like for a while I was like picking up my shirts for work, like off the ground, because the closet wasn't there. And like, it seems simple, but it's kind of like, all right, I got to sort through a stack of clothes. And then for like a couple of weeks, like we were still getting sinks done and things, like the only running water was through bathtubs. Right. And so you make do. You do. Make do, right?
But it starts to wear on you. It really starts to wear on you down, you know, down to like the littlest things will kind of like set you off.
Because everything just takes more work.
Well, and it takes twice as
like
long.
Life just so getting the renovation done, but just life in general is just so clunky. It's not smooth flowing.
Exactly. And especially with like, if you've got busy schedules and kids, it's like, you know, it just throws one more kind of kink in the chain there.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious, so going on from like kind of buyer perspective and advice, let's talk just flat out design. Okay. Like what are people, is it kind of like, what are we seeing popular out there? What are we seeing? Like, what are do's and don'ts there? And maybe I think we'll get into like listing side of things. Maybe do's and don'ts are blended all together, because I'm really curious on that side of things. But as people are thinking of design their own, you know, getting into their space. Yeah. Sorry, one other quick reference is I had a really good friend of mine connecting, and now we everyone's an artist in their own right. Right. Exactly. But at the same, and if you're gonna live in that house forever, fantastic. Great. But there's like a social media accounts that will show houses. I don't remember their exact handle, but they will show like the wildest customized houses where it's like, oh, you really wanted like, you know, there was one here in Flagstaff too that had like AstroTurf inside a room and like floral wallpaper, and like it's just wow. Yeah.
No, you know? it's kind of crazy, because like before I got into real estate, I used to design luxury custom homes, like custom from like digging the ground first, and the thing that's funny is, having gone through that process, when I walk in homes now and I see like weird rooms that don't make sense or weird angles, and I'm like, especially if it's a custom home, there was some reason that was done that way, because that's how all my past clients' homes were built. It was like, we kind of made the room fit the baby grand piano that they had inherited, or you know what I mean? you made these things work. And so, it's kind of crazy, but that's what I see. Like when I walk into houses, is I'm like, those weird, quirky things. I'm like, there was a reason. I don't know what it was. There's times where I'd love to be a fly on the wall when it was discussed. Sure. Yeah. But it's, you know, there was a reason why something was designed that way. Yeah. But the problem is, it doesn't always work for like today. Yeah. Or the next owner, you know.
And that's where I think things get really, really tricky, is that you got to think of what works for you. And all too often, and I know we love our space, but I think that people oftentimes, and I see this in my world all the time, is that we have a hard time thinking through the next week or month or day sometimes, much less realizing that we're going to have a need, and like taking us, like we were terrible at stopping. Like this, my New Year's resolution is like, stop and think a little bit, because we're like inundating ourselves with, you know, all sorts of information all the time. And for them to stop and think of like, I actually might not live here in 3 years.
Right.
So should we really dump 75 grand into the backyard of our dreams? And knowing like financially and ROI aspect of that, but also, are you going to do a ton of things that aren't necessarily going to be, well, again, that comes in the financial, but valued or sellable
right
down the road.
And that's the hard part, because it's like, I know there was a house that I was looking at for one of my comps for one of my listings, and it was, yes, it had been remodeled. The home had been remodeled. My listing hadn't been remodeled, but the home had been remodeled really specifically to like those people. And it was hard because I'm like, that's why it wasn't selling, because I couldn't figure out why this house wasn't selling when their price per square foot was less than mine, but they were remodeled. But then when you looked at it, I was like, it was designed, like the materials, everything were very buyer specific, where it's like, I think if you're thinking you're going to sell in a couple of years, maybe, maybe put your personality in with the accessories, or, or maybe do like wallpaper. That's easy.
Yep.
Wallpaper is an easy one to kind of, change out when you go to sell it. But this one was like, the sinks were very artist, they were very done, like the blown glass from Sedona, and and the countertops were, I think, like a rainforest marble, and so it was very buyer specific.
Wow,
yeah, where it's like most buyers, I think today just want the neutral, they want the bright, not so much the gray anymore. The gray's kind of gone out. But I mean, I still, I have a gray sectional. I still love my light gray sectional, but it's one of those things where it's a balance now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think people want more warmth in the house, so they're bringing in like the lighter colors on the paint. I've seen more white. People like white walls.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. I can't do the white wall thing. I just can't. So that's where I'm like, you know what? Find a neutral. Like, I think Sherwin-Williams has 2 great neutrals. Like, there's agreeable gray and accessible beige. And I think that's even what Capstone uses on their homes. Okay. But yeah, it's very, very specific. Okay. But it's, one is like, it's a gray, but it's warm. You can put warm tones with it. You can, so it just goes with everything.
Yeah.
And the other one's a little bit more on the like beige side. But yeah, that's kind of what more I'm seeing, and more texture. Like, people are wanting texture in the house, like wicker or like wood elements. They're kind of just warming it up. It's kind of becoming like more of a earthy balance.
Yeah. It's interesting to see. Again, you are the expert here, not me. But I'm interested to where I love the balance in design, where there's rules and you know when to keep them and when to break them.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting where I'll see certain styles, like stylistically, and this is where I feel like, it's been fun. You can have fun with this.
Yes.
Like when my wife and I are kind of balancing each other out. And so when it's like, okay, we kind of like some like boho elements little bit, just because of the contrast, like Scandinavian boho, like very dark contrast stuff. But like a mountain feel to it, to where we're also throwing in, more textures and colors.
Yeah, the textures kind of help, I think, bring it down a little bit to more like what everyone would want to live in. That's the hard thing too. It's like, you can make it real pretty, and but then it's like living in it is a whole nother story. It's like, you want it to feel comfortable while you're living in it.
Yes, and functional.
Yeah, you don't want like a white sofa if you have a 2-year-old.
No, no, exactly.
That is not going to go. That's just going to stress you out. So it's just, it's that balance of trying to find what can you live in and what feels comfortable to you. Because, I mean, what feels comfortable to you and to me is probably 2 different things.
Yeah.
I remember I had one client where if it was just the slightest beige, she saw gold.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so it's just, people see different things, but it is getting really interesting. People still want the bright open feel. I'm still seeing like the white kitchens, but I think there's more contrast now.
Yeah.
Like they want a dark element thrown in if they have the white countertops.
Okay.
Or dark countertops. I actually am looking at doing like my master bathroom in like black cabinets.
Okay. Yeah.
I like the look,
Yeah.
So, but it has kind of that same bohemian kind of boho feel to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there is, and that's where I think you do have to talk to a professional or talk to, or as much as you can. And it's one of those things that people, I think, sometimes think that these things are like crazy, ridiculously expensive. But like getting a design consult and stuff. It's not crazy. And if it saves, like when you look at the cost of furniture and the cost of like paint and things, it's like just getting a little bit of direction on this stuff is huge. And getting that feedback, like, again, you get what you pay for on these things. And so, but I think in the perspective on like the big picture, but the other factor is like the sellability and the timelessness. Yeah. Right. Is finding there's some pretty versatile things that you can do out there that it's like, okay, sure. Our base cabinet color, our countertop color, our flooring, like, you know, things that are going to be more expensive to do that we can do in a more timeless manner to where like, sure, we'll change out hardware. Sure, we'll change out, you know, if we want to do an accent wall or wallpaper, like that's easy. But trying to get more timeless elements in there too.
I mean, absolutely. And that's the thing too, like with the high-end, like luxury custom homes, that's what you see in a lot of them is the countertops and the cabinets. They're just good quality. Like sometimes they're alder cabinets, but they're just good quality cabinets and just timeless countertops too. It's like when you try and get too specific with it, that's where you go wrong. If you want to get more personality, do it with the furniture, do it with the throw pillows, or like you said, wallpaper. Wallpaper's actually come back. Just crazy.
Oh, we love that.
It's just crazy, but I'm like, I'm loving like I'm actually considering covering up our Venetian plaster in our powder bathroom with wallpaper. And I'm like, never in a million years I ever think this.
I got to throw I mean, I don't know, like, we're not as proud as we hope to be here, but whoever's listening, at least for you, let me turn you on to this one. You'll have to let me know what you think of this one real quick. And so we did, I'll show you some of the stuff that we did in the Sedona place. And we found this specific artist, and we're very careful with that, but it's also like, you know, when it is when it's an accent piece, right? Because like we were in this one Airbnb once, and we love the master wallpaper, and my wife was like in love with it, and so we're like, oh, let's do that in our master. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that stuff was like ridiculously expensive. Like pass. I did.
That's where you're trying to find something very similar to it.
Yes, it was hard. We haven't found that one yet. But we have gotten super in the wallpaper game, and I found out that I am not a wallpaper hanger.
It's hard. It is really hard
to do it well. Cause then I'm like, so this was actually one of my biggest breaking points on a remodel situation where I just thought, hey, I have a 3-ish foot, or it's just under 3 foot span of a space I was doing over. I'd done a vertical hung shiplap as an accent wall with then a ledge and then was just going to do this wallpaper piece above it. Okay. It's just kind of a nice accent wall. So I was like, okay, we minimized the amount because shiplap, you know, that stuff's cheap. Right. And I know it still can be done right?
Yes. Yeah. There's you can do it right and you could do it really poorly.
Yeah. Well, and also like it's still in style.
Yeah, it totally is.
Depending on it. Don't overly farmhouse everything.
No. And I think that's the thing is like people go with one theme and it's like, well, you can take that one theme, but still put in some elements of things that you like too and that are today. Yeah. Yeah. Where the farmhouse, I mean, if you did your whole house in farmhouse, it's not a lost cause. You know, just take out some of the accessories and swap them out with something else. It's a little warmer. Yeah.
So, and long story short, I thought I could hang this thing myself. And I just remember my wife was on her way down. She was coming to help on the project, but I just was impatient. I was like, this will be easy. And
that's always where it goes wrong.
I literally was like, just crumbled and strut. Like the whole thing was like bubbling up and a mess, and we had to scrap the whole piece.
And it dries quickly. I mean, you've got to there is an art to it. There really is.
So, but check. So, I'll show you this. You gotta check out. So it's Kate Zarimba. And she was super helpful because I called her. I totally screwed it up. I was like, what did I do? And she totally hooked me up. So look at some of this stuff. What do you think of some of this stuff?
Oh, that's super cool. See, I'm not a fan of that. That's a little, I don't know. This reminds me of like 1970s, but like this stuff I like.
Yeah. So kind of unique, right? Yeah. And so, and like, look at like some of that stuff too. Yeah. Yeah. And some different colors in it. And so I think too, like when you look at the cost of it, so we ended up putting in some bathrooms where it's like, hey, we have a smaller little wall or behind like the vanity where you're not doing a whole room.
Nope. It's just enough. And it makes it kind of like the art, it's like the artwork in there. Yeah. And it's so easy to, I mean, you sell your house, you can take it down if it's too specific.
Okay. Can I throw one other one at you?
Yeah, no, definitely.
So again, in this vein, but I try and cut corners where I can effectively. So I did a stencil.
Okay.
How did that work out? Stencil?
No.
Well, you're going to tell me how you think it worked out.
That sounds really time consuming.
It wasn't bad.
Okay.
It actually wasn't bad.
Okay.
I would do it again.
Okay, that's always a good sign.
And I tried to be smart on the pattern, just because I was like, hey, I need to be able to execute on this. I don't want to get something that's super intricate or something.
Yeah.
How'd I do?
Oh, wow, you did really good. That's kind of impressive, Chris.
So it kind of has like distressed, if you will. Like, it's not like perfect lines.
No, but it's
like,
pretty impressive.
And you just move the stencil along.
Yeah.
So I just went on Etsy and found a stencil. I'm really checking my man card today with Pinterest, Etsy, and Hallows and all these things.
Right. No, but that's really impressive though, because I did in my youngest daughter's when it was her baby room.
Yeah.
I did, it was one of those things where I had drawn it out on paper and thought it was going to be super simple. So not. But I had done a stencil of diamonds.
Okay.
But they were large diamonds.
Okay.
And then I did one in a flat paint and one in a high gloss.
Okay.
Yeah. And yes, way more complicated than I thought.
Yeah.
Because it was a several day process where you had to wait for the one to dry and then move the tape again. And then you had to seal the tape and so it was, way more complicated. But that looks more doable.
Oh, it was super doable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was super doable. Huh. So yeah, stencils.
Impressive.
Stencils. So, I mean, whereas like, a wallpaper, you can be anywhere from like, what, $3-5 a foot to like 30, 40, 50, 100.
Exactly.
Like, I've seen some crazy stuff out there.
There's some crazy prices out there for wallpaper.
Yeah, especially when you start to add texture, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Or the ones that come out of Europe. I mean, those ones, they're beautiful. Yeah. But no.
And it's hard when you're like, when you realize you have bougie taste on certain things. You're like, we love this wallpaper. You're like, oh, honey, that's the $100 a foot one. You're like, oh,
that's usually where I go. And then, and then I see the price. I'm like, okay, where's the alternatives?
Yeah. No, but then, if you, a can of paint and a stencil, like I probably was $30 into that one and did the entire room because we wanted to do the entire room on that one.
Yeah. Now I know what you're doing in your free time. Oh, you're stenciling walls.
Yeah. So my wife, she did give me a pass on that one. She was really nervous. She's like, you're totally going to screw up this wall. And she did,
Worst case, you just paint over it.
Correct. Yeah.
No big deal.
So let's dive in real quick to the listing side of things.
Okay.
So there's a balance to where when you say there's that, to where, and actually I had a client ask me yesterday, they're thinking of selling in a couple of years from now when they retire, and they're like, hey, should we, do we do new carpet, new different things, because it's like, and I said, there's a value to like washing the car before you sell it.
Right.
But at the same time, someone may want to do things themselves.
Right. So, or they may want to just take the carpet out altogether and do,
correct,
floors in it, or you just never know.
Yeah. So they're not going to value what you did. And they get, you see that backside, you're talking about the buyer.
Right.
Right. And some buyers can see through that and other buyers need it to look a little. Yeah. So what's that balance on the list?
On the list side, this is where I look at it. Cause I just had a client that was in the same situation but they came to me like right before we were getting ready to list it. Yeah. So in my mind, redoing the kitchen and all that didn't make a whole lot of sense for them because they weren't going to get to enjoy it. Yeah. So I'm like, if you're going to get to enjoy it for a couple of years, then you know what? Then go ahead and do the kitchen. Go ahead and do the bath. Do it, if the mindset of that it's neutral and somebody else would want to buy this. It's not, buyer specific, because I think sometimes people, they do like colored cabinets and then it's hard. It's hard for another buyer to see that. Yeah. I've seen like the turquoise cabinets and it looks fun and everything, but that may not be for every buyer. So you got to keep it super neutral where you could see, somebody else would want to move their stuff in there too. But I mean, then there's other things too you could do, just to get it ready to go on the market. Like if you have oak cabinets, highly recommend paint them white or black or something. Okay. It just looks better. Yeah. But you have to look at like what the countertop is and make sure that it all kind of goes together. But because I'm not ready to redo our kitchen yet, that is exactly what I did. Like probably, I think 30 days after we moved in, couldn't stand the oak cabinets, and they were a good quality, and I was like, I just can't get rid of these cabinets yet when I want to redo the whole kitchen the way I want it. Yep. And so, we had someone come in, paint the cabinets, and they look professional. You would never, ever know.
We did the same thing. Yeah. We had oak, great quality. Yep. What was super, super cool, we even found so what we kind of done is There's some great cabinet shops that you can connect with where they match the older style.
Yeah.
Of what we had from the 90s. That was still like a cool style because it's kind of timeless and everything.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of them just had like the arch top on them. They don't have the little curl,
Yeah. And ours was like a really cool panel kind of look.
Yep,
So they were rad cabinets. And then we had them we just did an island, ordered a new island with matching style. And then like a walnut. Yeah. So we like two-toned it.
Yeah, which I think I like that look, because I think especially in larger kitchens when it's all the same, I don't know, the island kind of needs to be special.
Yeah.
It needs to have like a statement piece.
Okay, and that's how we felt instead of removing all the cabinets and doing a whole new look. That's how we kind of brought that feel to it. So I think that's so valuable when you have someone like your experience that's gone into it to just kind of know where can you cut some corners and not think that you have to. Because you start adding up costs very quickly on these things.
Oh yeah, cabinets they're not cheap.
No,
but there are some. You can find some deals. We had on our last house, we had redone the kitchen, and it wasn't like we planned it. Basically, dishwasher went out, and whoever put it in just cut the shape, but it didn't fit. So new dishwasher comes in, and of course, I've ordered many appliances over the years, and I'm like, no, there's two sizes for dishwashers, and so ordered the right one, didn't fit.
Oh no!
So we had to redo the cabinets, but the cabinets.
This sounds like a bit of an excuse.
I know. It actually worked. It actually worked. I know this is the whole reconstruction. And so it actually worked out though because there's sometimes where some of the like HomeCo or Home Depot in town, they're getting rid of like a whole line of cabinets. But they still have a ton there.
Yeah.
And it's like you may not be able to have every option you want, but if you just go and see what they've got on the styles and the colors that they're discontinuing, and they're great. I mean, ours was like a maple, and so it was like a cinnamon maple color, and we were able to do the whole kitchen and the laundry room cabinets for like a butler's pantry and 2 bathrooms. I think under $1,000. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy but it was one of those things where we just had to kind of piece together the different cabinet styles with drawers and whatever and be open to do that. Yeah. But it totally worked.
I love it. Well, we are, time flies in this room, so we've got time. But thank you so much, Ashley, for coming on. And you guys, connect with Ashley. It's awesome that you have a realtor that can negotiate and then also have a little bit of an eye to help you out as well there.
And it's fun. It's just fun to be able to, share that with clients too.
I love it.
So
awesome. Well, thanks for being on, Ashley.
Thanks, Chris.